Hey guys, it's Terrence here with fishnetproductions.com, and today is the second day in the series that I'm doing on reverb. Now, in the first video, we sort of gave an introduction to reverb and gave a broad overview of some of its uses and purposes and talked about some of its parameters and knobs and things like that. But in this video today, we're going to be talking about sonic layering, better known as stacking reverbs. All right, so let's do it. Now, the idea behind sonic layering is that each instrument sort of has its own personalized ambient environment. So this is in contrast to, say, everything being all in the same room, say a room setting on a reverb or a hall or something like that. This would be the vocal has its own ambient environment, so it sits in its own room. Same thing with the drums and every other instrument in your track. So that's the idea behind sonic layering. It should also be said that when you're adding these layers sonically, that they also become a frequency source in your mix. So if you already have a good clean mix that you've cleaned out pretty well and cleaned off the mud and stuff out of your tracks and stuff like that, and you have a pretty good mix going, and then you start to add these reverbs, they can muddy back up your track really quick. So you have to be careful with that. Now, what I really like about sonic layering is it has a sort of catch-22 thing about it, where it actually can glue tracks together when everything is sitting in its own ambient environment, but it also provides a sense of separation for everything too. So it's this really weird thing to where you get separation and glue at the same time, and those are almost two kind of opposing things in mixes. So either you're kind of gluing something together or either you're separating them. So it's a really cool thing here with sonic layering. So let me show you how this works. So I have here the same track that we were using in the original video, the first video on reverb, and I'll play a little bit of this for you with all of the reverb settings here I have turned off, so you can kind of get a sense of where it is. Now, I already have a good mix on the track. It's pretty much where I want it. I may do some further tweaks to it, but it has pretty much everything I want in it. So just give it a listen. Okay, nothing wrong with the mix again at all. It's pretty well separated. It's almost exactly where I want it. However, I do want some things to kind of sit in the mix a little bit better, and I want to connect some things a little bit better. So the first thing I've done is I've gotten a reverb here, and I'll show you on my lead vocal. It's the Lexicon verb, and I've bussed this vocal to this room verb here just to kind of give it its own ambient space. And I'll solo this vocal so you can just hear what that sounds like. I'll start with it off and then I'll turn it on.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it, but I'll be gone before you know it.
Alright, now with this reverb, it's a mono verb because I don't want to stereo my vocal. I don't want to change the stereo spectrum of where it is. It's sitting directly in the center, and that's where I want it to be for now. So I just use this room verb here to kind of help it sit back in the mix a little bit. It's a little bit up front, which it should be, but it's a little bit too far out front, and I can use this room verb to help it just sit back in the track a little bit more. So let me let you hear what that sounds like in the mix. Alright, see, it's just a subtle effect that just helped that vocal sit back just a little bit in the mix, just to keep it from sitting here directly on top of your nose, in your face, and to sit back in that mix and blend with the tracks a little bit more. Alright, so next up, I've kind of done the same thing with the guitar verb, and I'm using the same, pretty much the same reverbs across of these. Like, for the most part, I like to keep my reverbs pretty consistent. Sometimes I'll throw another one on there depending on what I'm looking for, but for the most part I like to keep them consistent. But anyway, I've done the same sort of thing here with the guitar verb. Now this guitar verb is a stereo verb, but it's also a room setting, so I just want that guitar again to kind of sit back. I don't want it to be on top of my face, right in my nose, everything like that. I want it to sit back a little bit and blend with the tracks a little bit better. So let me let you hear what that sounds like. I'll solo the guitar track and then I'll turn the reverb on as it's playing. All right, so just a very subtle amount of room verb on this guitar. Now, let me also play this in the context of the mix and let you hear what that sounds like. So I'll start with it off and then I'll turn it on.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it. But I'll be gone before you know it.
All right, again, another very subtle effect. Now, I sort of have the same thing going on with the drums. I love to put my drums in their own sort of room, the same way that you would hear live drums recorded in a real room in a studio or in whatever environment they're recorded in. So same thing here. It's a pretty much a longer verb than the other two room verbs I put here, but it's still fairly short. All right, so just listen to the drums by themselves. Here we go. All right, again, the same thing, just a little space around the drums, nothing major, nothing that's going to make it stick out in the mix or anything like that. Just a little ambience to give it its own space. All right, so now let's hear what that sounds like in the context of the mix.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it. But I'll be gone before you know it.
All right, now let's take a listen to all of these reverbs, just these three, the one on the lead vocal, the one on the guitar, and the one on the drums in the context of the mix. And I'll start with them all off and then I'll turn them on.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it. But I'll be gone before you know it.
All right, so really cool thing right there. So let me play it again, and this time just have a listen to the stereo spectrum, especially of the guitars. When I engage the reverbs, the guitars just seem to get a little bit wider in the stereo spectrum, and the vocal seems to sit better in the middle, and everything, just the drums, the vocals, and the guitar just seem to be blended together for some particular reason, just a little bit more. But it's, again, it's those reverbs that are kind of separating, but at the same time gluing together. So give that a listen.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it. But I'll be gone before you know it.
All right, so very, very cool effect. So the last thing that I've done here with the reverbs is I've sent all of the tracks to a main reverb because I still want everything to be in its own room, like everything was played in one centralized place. So I still want that sort of sound for this mix. So I'm using another reverb to do that. And also there are other instruments that are in this mix that I haven't given their own environment to, like the synth and the strings here, simply because I just want those to be dry. They sound better to me in this mix. But if it were you, you could actually do the same thing here as long as you just kind of make sure those frequencies aren't clashing. So again, the final thing I've done is, let me open this reverb. It is the main verb here, and it's also the lexicon. I have it on sort of a live sound preset here, and it sounds really good. So I just dialed a little bit of that in to kind of help the other instruments here that I don't have in their own space to blend in with everything else that's going on and to glue the rest of the tracks together. So now let me start with that off and engage it, and I'll let you hear what it sounds like. Here we go.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it. But I'll be gone before you know it.
Now that's very subtle, and it's probably around the amount that I will use in this track. But for the purposes of this, let me turn it up just a little bit so you can kind of hear the difference between what's going on in this track without the reverb. All right, let me try it again. Here we go.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it. But I'll be gone before you know it.
All right, again, nothing major there, just adding a little glue and a little space to the entire mix. So what's happening there, again, is the vocal has its own room, its own centralized mono room, so it's staying right there directly in the center. The guitar has its own room to where it's panned hard left and hard right because this is a stereo guitar. So it's kind of sitting in its own room. And the same thing with the drums here. The drums have their own room as well. So that's what we're doing. We're connecting all of these. Now, let me show you what I'm using as far as EQ on these verbs, because again, as I said in the beginning, it's very important that you don't create more frequency problems in your mix when you're doing these type of things when you're layering. So let me show you what I'm doing here as far as EQ. So on the lead vocal here, I have a high pass filter and a low pass filter. Now let me let you in on my approach that I use to EQ reverbs when I'm layering in this fashion. Now the first thing I'll do is I'll always put, at least with most of the reverbs, I'll always put a high pass filter on them. Reverbs, most of the reverbs that I use anyway, cause a lot of low end buildup, and when I'm sending things like my bass track and my kick drum to those reverbs and stuff like that, I don't want this low end buildup down here in these lower frequencies because it's just bringing more mud to my mix. So in most cases, I'll always throw a high pass filter on. Most of the time I'll put it up somewhere around 100 to maybe 140 hertz or something like that, just depending on what instrument it's on and what kind of sound I'm getting from it. Now, the other thing, and sort of a secret of how I do it to give that separation of everything, is I like to EQ my reverbs according to how long or how short they are. So the shorter verbs, I'll tend to make those darker, while the longer verbs, I'll tend to make those brighter. So the room verb here is a really short verb that's on this lead vocal. So I've done a low pass filter here where I've just put this low pass filter actually all the way down to 4,000, and I'll let you hear the difference in what that sounds like. It's a very subtle thing, but you'll hear the difference when I turn it off and when I turn it on. So let me let you hear what that sounds like.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it, but I'll be gone before you know it.
So basically what happened is when I disengaged the low pass filter, it gave me those sibilant kind of T's and S's back. So have a listen to it again. I'll actually start with it on this time and listen to, once I disengage it, it'll give me those S's and T's and stuff back. Watch, here we go.
You thought you had me wrapped up like a gift in a box to collect whenever you wanted it, but I'll be gone before you know it.
So again, my reasoning for putting this low pass filter on, or engaging this low pass filter here, is again to just keep those sort of things out. I just want to create an ambient space for the vocal. I don't want to add a bunch of sibilants and things like that I've already worked hard to take out of the mix, you know, with de-essers and things like that. So that's what I've done on this lead vocal verb. Now on the guitar verb, it's sort of the same thing here. I've high pass filtered this up to 105 hertz. And I've low pass filtered it sort of for the exact same reason that I did the lead vocal. Those upper ends of that guitar was just giving me some high end that I didn't want in this particular song. So, and again, this is a short reverb, so I don't want that to kind of stick out. I just want the environment to be around it. Here I gave a boost at the 200 hertz area. There was some really grungy sound down there that I liked that was coming from that reverb, that I just engaged it here, and I just gave it a little bit of boost, 3 dB, nothing that you would hear in the context of the mix necessarily. It's more something that you can sense. It just gives that low end sense to that guitar. So I'll start with this engaged, and I'll turn off this low pass filter first. All right, check it out. All right, again, just cutting a little bit of that high end off the guitar to where it's up there in those frequencies that's giving me that kind of tingy kind of sound. Just a little bit of it, cut it off. Now check out what this 200 frequency is giving me here. I'll start with it off and then I'll turn it on so you can hear how it kind of just gives that guitar just a little bit more grunge in that low end and pushes it a little bit more. Check it out. All right, again, nothing major there, just a sense of a little bit more fullness in that bottom end of the guitar. So again, the thing with layering reverbs, guys, is it actually gives your sound a different sort of texture when you add these reverbs to it. It gives it a sense of fullness, a sense of depth, sense of things like this, bigness, roundness. It gives it all of this, which, you know, reverbs are notorious for, which is a good thing, but you have to be really, really careful to not let all of this stuff build up, because actually these reverbs become another element in your mix. And when you start to add them, you start to add more elements. It's almost like adding another instrument to your mix. The more things you have going on in your mix at one time, the harder it is to achieve separation. Now, let me let you hear what all of these EQs are doing to the reverb and how it's affecting the entire track. So I'm going to play the track and start with these off, and then I'll engage them and you can kind of hear what they're doing. Now, again, it's sort of a subtle effect, so you have to really listen carefully to hear it, but just listen to how the low end kind of cleans out a little bit because of my high pass filters here, how some of the sibilance of the vocals and stuff kind of go away, things of that nature, how the drums get a little bit more bigger in the mix, and how everything is sort of glued together with this main reverb. All right, so here we go. All right, guys, so it's as simple as that. Sonic layering, stacking reverbs. Again, the idea is to give each instrument or each vocal, whatever it is you have going on in your track, its own ambient space, and to keep those frequencies of those spaces from clashing in the same way that you do from the individual tracks in your mix. So you're almost mixing reverbs as if they were instruments. So there are many different things you can do to the reverbs to do this. You could even add some compression and stuff like that in gates. We talked about the special effect type of reverb. So there's a million ways that you can do this, but EQing reverbs is definitely the most popular out of all of them. So again, guys, I hope that helped you out. I hope you got something out of this video about sonic layering. So I'll end the video here. Now join me in the next video where we're going to be talking about how much reverb to use and how to actually know that you're using the right amount of reverb for your particular mix. So you don't want to miss out on that. And listen, guys, make sure you go subscribe to the channel. Again, hit that subscribe button up at the top so you'll get the notifications when these videos come out. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.